Erica and Sharon are sisters who began their grief journey in 2006 when Erica's 10-year-old son Austin drowned. Together, they participated in a grief education program, were so moved by this experience, they studied and became specialists so they could help the brokenhearted find recovery. In 2015, tragedy struck their family once again when Erica's oldest son Donovan was killed in a motorcycle accident. Erica and Sharon are committed to sharing their experiences of love, loss, and healing through this podcast. Now your grief specialists, Sharon and Erica.
Hey friends, welcome back. You are listening to Healing Starts with the Heart, the podcast where it's all about you, the griever, and your broken heart. We are so excited, Erica and I, today to have some amazing guests. How exciting. Hey, Erica.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another great episode of the podcast. We're so glad you guys keep showing up for us, and hopefully we will keep delivering great topics. And I'm really excited about having the guests today.
Yeah, so Erica and I are grieving this morning, everyone, because we have had technical difficulties for the last hour. So I just want to let you know, Erica's on my cell phone right now, but we're going to do the best we can. First, I want to introduce you to the amazing David, my really good friend. How are you this morning, my friend?
Hello, Sharon. It's just wonderful to see you.
I have been dreaming about having you as a guest on this podcast for so long, and we tried a couple times, but we couldn't make it work, right?
Well, that's life.
Yes.
You know, sometimes we've been trying to, we can't even make it for a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
After, but Sharon, you're so present in my life all the time.
Can you believe that?
Yeah. I mean, let's believe it, because you've been critical in my life.
But I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I have to tell everyone that you make the most amazing coffee. And I love going to your house and have this amazing coffee. Erica, this is David. David, this is Erica.
Hi, Erica.
Hi, David. Welcome to the podcast. I think that is so amazing what you just said, that Sharon is present in your life. I think that's so cool.
So, David, why don't you tell our friends a little bit about yourself? Who are you, and what do you do in this big town we have?
Oh, my gosh. All right. I am actually, I like to say that, you know, I was just joking with the gentleman who's behind.
Furman, the producer. Yeah.
I was joking with him about having 2 PhD degrees, but that my life has, coming from Irish drunk family, where my father died of the disease. There are several members of my family. You know, they were diagnosed with other things, but they basically died of alcoholism. Oh. So it runs in my family. And anyway, the fact that I acknowledged this 32 years ago.
Yes.
And I have been sober for 32 years, so that is very important to me.
Yes.
From the outset, that's part. And that was also part we were talking about recovery.
Yeah.
And grieving. And so that's been a big part of my life, grieving over people who are beautiful human beings whom I love dearly, but they're dying of the disease of alcoholism.
Right, right.
And so I have to face that kind of, and you know, I learned
every
Sharon,
day
that we did the grief work together,
yeah.
And that little book that's been so important to me, to be able to grieve the right way, right? So that, anyway, I tell you, I'm a Midwestern kid. I'm not too far from the farm. Grew up in the city of Cleveland.
I love you, David. I just love you.
Well, you asked me who I am.
Yeah, who you are.
So that is a big part of me, that whole thing about the
Okay, but let's go back to the beginning.
Yeah.
So 2 years ago, you called me. Tell me about your beautiful wife.
It's 3 years ago, yes.
3 years ago.
Can I speak about how I happened to call you?
You can speak about whatever you want.
Okay, so what I want to say is that I met Sharon originally at some kind of a function in Santa Clarita. I think it was a Chamber of Commerce mixer. And when Sharon told me she was a grief counselor, you know, now I've spent, 35, 40 years as a, quote, shrink counselor, whatever. I'd never heard of an official grief counselor. I knew about grieving, thought I knew something about it. And anyway, and I told Sharon this story about my dog Daisy May. Daisy Mae was just this beautiful, long-eared. She was a combination of, oh God, she was just a mongrel dog with long ears. Anyway, beautiful. She was my buddy for 16 years, 15, 16 years. And I told Sharon at our first meeting about grief. I set such grief over the loss of that dog. And you remember you gave me your card.
Yeah, 100% I remember.
So whenever it was, a couple of years later, when Johnny died, it'll be 3 years this coming February that she died.
Yeah.
My beloved partner of 46 years. And I was, after she died, I said, you know, I'm a mental health professional. I can do this on my own, right? I can nail this. Now I had friends, associates, professional colleagues said, David, don't do it alone.
Mm-hmm.
There are groups, and they told me about people like you, Sharon.
Yeah.
But I said, you know, it's one of my character flaws is that I have omnipotence. I think I can heal everybody. I could, you know, solve everything, fix everything,
Yeah.
right? So, what was it? It was, I think, Sharon, I called you up. It was about 3 months after John died, wasn't it? It was later in
about 3 months.
2017.
Yeah.
And I was such a mess.
Yes.
I was grieving, I was cursing God, I was falling on the ground, I was having accidents, I was crashing through a door at home, I fell down, got a concussion, went to the emergency, my daughter, thank God, was there, and went through all those things, and they were all part of my not being able to deal with the grief.
Right.
And Sharon, I called you up then. I had your card.
Yes,
I
you
said,
did.
I'm going to call this woman who I should remember Daisy Mae, and we immediately connected on the phone.
And I
because you
remember
remember
Daisy
Daisy.
Mae.
You remember Daisy Mae. And Sharon, when you came, and then I didn't go to your office. You agreed to come to my home. You walked into my house. Now that, you know how you changed my life. You said, David, you realize what you've been up to for the months since your wife died?
Yeah.
Avoiding grieving,
Yeah.
avoiding the pain. Now we're going to get to work and you're going to experience the pain.
So on my version, Erica, the phone rang and David was on the other end and he said, I don't know how I got your card. And I met you somewhere, but I've held on to your card. And he said, my beautiful Janny has passed. And he said, these were the words, I don't know how to do this grieving thing. And so he and I had a conversation. I remember the conversation about the dog. And when I hung up the phone, I literally freaked out. I freaked out because I was like, this man is so intelligent. How am I going to share grief with him? He's so smart and he's from the medical industry. How am I going to share grief with him? And this thought came to my head. He's a griever. Erica, and then I said, I'm a griever. And if we stay at that level, we can help each other. And the other thing you asked is, you said, can you come to my home? And I knew you, and I met Janny and all that. Now, I felt very comfortable because I don't normally go into people's homes, but I went to your home, and I shared that with you. So, Eric, I said to him, I said, you're a griever and I'm a griever. And we hugged.
Yeah.
That's such an amazing story. That is so awesome. My heart is just like swelling just listening to you two talk. I wish I could be there because it's like I feel like I can feel the connection, but that's something that I think often gets lost when we're trying to work with grievers, is that automatically there's that broken hearts connect. So
Yeah.
because we had the pain before and you were in pain, you were able to connect immediately, which is so great. And I'm also so glad, David, that you didn't talk yourself out of finding someone to help you, considering you are in the mental health field and that you do have a tool set, but you just needed someone to kind of, spruce up your tools and show you how to use them maybe in a different way.
Yeah, and what was so powerful for me, in the 12-step programs I do, we always speak about, you don't want to talk to the alcoholic or whatever, give them advice. You share your experience, your strength, and your hope. And that's what Sharon did right from the beginning. I mean, I remember, Sharon, before we actually delved into it. Do you remember?
Yeah.
You said, now, David, I'm going to share with you
Yes.
my grieving. And that was so powerful to me because
Right.
then you became human. You became a presence, a griever who was present to share with me.
Yeah.
And you weren't this trained, sort of professional who was going to lay this program on me or, whatever
But I don't think I ever told you I was scared to death, but you made me feel so comfortable. Because the other thing was, I saw the grief in your face and in your body and in the way a griever walks and the brokenness. And I just was honest. And I shared Austin. I shared my Austin story with you.
Yes.
And we
Yeah.
sat right there and you made that amazing cup of coffee.
I also tried to persuade you to eat some chocolate, some forbidden things that I indulge in every once in a while, and you refused to. You would drink the coffee, but you realize you never ate one of those goodies. And I would get these special
Every day, every time I would come,
madeleines.
you would have the table set, and you would have banana and madeleines and coffee, and I'm like, no, I'm just going to drink coffee.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
somewhere,
it sounds like you missed out on that.
I'm going to have to go back. I'm going to have to go back. But share your beautiful Janny with us. Tell us who she was.
Well, oh gosh, the story of Janny and me, the story of us is, in many ways, it's just very typical of couples who fall madly in love and go through, and now, one of the things professionally that Jan and I think you know that story. We were
Yes.
child psychoanalysts, child psychotherapists, and we did a lot of work with families, right?
Yes.
We were saving children and work with families. We didn't know diddly about how to counsel couples who fell madly in love, had children, right?
Yeah.
And then they're ready to divorce because they're in power struggles. Now, Johnny and I, well, let's see the story. I was teaching at UCLA, this is years ago, that's my very first career, professor of language and literature. And Jan was 38, I was about 35 at the time. I was the young professor kind of showing off and all the things that you do as an academic. And she said she came to my lecture to hear, decide what course she was going to take. And she said she fell in love with me on the lectern, lecturing about Kafka or Thomas Mann or whatever it was. But, I didn't know that until later. And the way I met her, it's interesting. You're a young professor, you don't have a teaching assistant. So here's 100 students in the class, right? So I said, all right, you're going to write a 2-page paper, right? If you any more than 2 pages, I'm going to hand it back. You redo it. 2-page paper about the book we were reading,
Right.
character. Right? We would give some topics. And there were 2 Janices in this class of about 100 students, spelled Janis. It's normally spelled ICE, right? And the first Janice, I read her paper. It was a nice paper, the kind of thing that you get from a 20-year-old UCLA undergraduate. Then I read my Jani's paper. Oh my God. Depth, emotion. She was identifying with this character. It was Death in Venice by Thomas Mann. Deep identification with Janice. This is a very mature, I've got to meet this.
Oh.
So I fell in love with her mind. I fell in love with her before I even knew who she was. When she walked in my, and then she walked into my office, and I've got to tell you about Janny. Jenny's just gorgeous. And when a dear friend of ours heard that she had passed, after she passed, said, "Oh my God, what a brilliant and beautiful human being."
Wow.
Jenny. And those 2 words describe Jenny, beautiful and brilliant.
Wow.
And we, and then from there, we were very proper because she was my student. Our very first date was funny. She overheard me saying that I was going to the Gypsy Wagon. This is UCLA those days had a sort of a snack bar outside because they were building. And she later told me she planned it to bump into me. She planned to bump into me at the Gypsy Wagon. And so, and she was dressed in this purple, to this day, I have the shirt.
Oh.
She would say lavender. I call it purple. But to this day, I have it in the closet. It's one thing that I will hang on to forever because there she was, and she was so gorgeous. And it was just spontaneous. I said, hi, hello, and I took her by the hand, come with me. Took her by the arm.
Yeah.
And I was house sitting for my dear friend Dick, and by the way, passed away prematurely. He was a professor of political science. We taught a course together at UCLA. Anyway, I was babysitting his dogs and his house right up the canyon above UCLA. I just took her by the arm, took her over, put her in Dick's red sports car. It was mine. I was driving a little Volkswagen Bug at the time, right? But I didn't tell her, come on with me. I just put her in the red sports car, drove up the canyon to his home to feed his dogs. And she assisted me, whatever. And then I finally had to confess. It's my friend's house. They're not my dogs. And I'm sitting for him. But it was our first date. And we just belonged together. We just fit together.
And you were this amazing couple because I met you both together.
Yeah, at that event. Now, at that time, when you met us, we were focused on saving imago relationship therapy.
Yeah.
And we are a very good example of, and we realized, wait, this marriage is made in heaven.
Yeah.
There's no way we could ever even think about divorcing or splitting.
Right.
Normal couples go through what we call a year, 9 months to a year of romantic honeymoon, oxytocins, neurotransmitters. It's called sexual romantic love.
Yeah.
Right? But it wears off.
Right.
And what we have to learn how to do after the romantic love is to get down to deep dialoguing with the human being, with empathy, respect, and truth-telling. And Johnny and I went to a workshop, went through all of that, and we ended up teaching it for 35 years. And to me, it's just one of the glorious things I had in my life, that with this woman I loved, we could share your example, of being present when you help with grieving.
Yeah.
We were present as a couple with those couples who wanted a divorce. We figured out 95% of couples who came to our workshop thinking they wanted to divorce, and they had heard that we were kind of a last straw, come to that. 95% we could save. The 3 or 4% were alcoholics, domestic violence, or some emotional, psychological disturbance that was diagnosed but was not taken care of. Those were the only 3 instances. Otherwise, we could save marriage.
That's a beautiful.
Those are great numbers.
They're great numbers.
We did that,
Wow.
and we did that for 35 years.
Let me ask you a question, David. So she was your best friend. She was your partner.
Yeah.
You guys, partner in crime. You did every time I saw you guys, you were together. It was the two of you. And then Janny left you, right? And you and I started the grief work. Explain a little bit about going through the process when I was coming to you and you were sharing every week. We would open with talking about her and you would go there. What was it like to just look at starting with the definition of grief and going through just the grief work? Because it's tough, right, David?
Sharon, one of the big things for me and these, especially since we did the work together, and then these last couple of years, is the James and Friedman book. They talk about, very often people think you grieve only, divorce and death.
Yeah.
But think about, the doggy, but there are so many other things that we grieve about. Now, I told you the story about being this professor at UCLA.
Yeah.
Okay. You could, talk for hours, I know. But I was there from 1968 to 1973. And I got fired, basically. I was an assistant professor, and my contract was canceled. And I got to realize, I went to Yale undergraduate, I've been in European universities, my dissertation was being blue penciled to publish at the UC Press. I mean, academically, I was very successful. Remember what was going on during the late 60s, early 70s? Kent State, Cambodia, Vietnam, all this stuff going on. Huge upheavals at the university. I got kind of caught up in all of that. I would, when I told the story about why did I lose my contract, why did I lose my career as a university professor, I would tell the story of, that was kind of a heroic story, you know, because I supported the kids protesting the Vietnam War.
Right.
Kent State, Cambodia time when, you know, the National Guard had live ammunition and killed students at Kent State in
Right.
Ohio.
Wow.
And the students were rebelling. My students at UCLA were taught me, hey, do you know what's going on in Vietnam? Do you know it's an unjust war? You know, in other words, I got caught up in all that. Now, that was a big part of it because my senior professors were all very conservative, you know, 20-year veterans. They said the only place that demonstrations took place were in Berkeley. How could UCLA be flaring up? And why are you professors? How could you be supporting those kids? And the way I supported it, I said, let's not drop tear gas on them. Let's have dialogues with them. And anyway,
All that grief came back up when we started the work.
the loss of my career.
Yes.
And the truthfulness about it.
Yes.
You know, I mentioned the alcoholism.
Yeah.
Now, that's when I was drinking. And I would drink too much at faculty parties and sound off and say, and I remember one of my colleagues, a woman, tugging on my arm saying, David, are you drunk? David, shut up. David.
Right.
Of course, I forgot about that stuff.
Right.
Because when you are an alcoholic, you forget. You go through, you overdo it.
And we talk also about how we use alcohol to stir, to use it as a short-term energy relieving behavior to cover up the pain that's in our heart.
Yes.
And so what
Definitely
you
don't want to feel the pain.
Right. And so what David and I discovered in his lost history graph was he wasn't just grieving his beautiful Janny. He was grieving a lifetime.
A
brokenness.
lifetime.
And you and I went through and we looked at each and every loss.
And Sharon, do you remember the very first
Graph.
relationship was
Right.
about my beloved father?
Yeah.
And when we started that process,
Yeah.
I hated the son of a bitch. She's
Yeah.
my friend.
That's okay.
Because of his drunkenness, his alcoholism, and I'm going to be frank, when he was drunk, he crossed the threshold with my sisters sexually, whatever. It's really difficult with all that stuff. And I hated the son of a bitch. But that graph
Yeah.
helped me. That was the beginning of the process for me, with that line across
Yeah.
the paper. And I
David,
knew.
I have a question.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but was there ever any hesitation when you first met Sharon and sat down with her because that she wouldn't understand your pain because she did not lose a spouse? We run into grievers who feel like we cannot understand them because we haven't experienced their same experiences.
From the very beginning, from that time that Sharon walked into my house, I had no doubts whatsoever. And she said, it was as if she were taking my hand and saying, David, I've been there, done that. You know, sharing her experience, I understand. And now let me guide you through this
Yeah.
process. I had no doubts about it. I had no doubts about it, Erica. No
That's
doubts
awesome.
that she would lead me and I would follow her wherever she took me. And that was amazing.
So we're going to be ending the show because you have some great information. I love you, David. But I want you to share with the one person who's listening to the show that's scared to do grief recovery. What is your advice to them?
My experience and my strength that I have and the hope that I have in my life, a good deal of that now is my early 80s as I enter my 80 years of life, that by letting myself, and the way, Sharon, the way you put it to me in that very first day, you said, David, you realize what you've been up to, what you've been doing for these months. I went on a cruise with the family. I was concerned about the grandchildren, concerned about our daughters. I was, typically taking care of all of them, but not grieving. And she said, you realize what you've been up to. You have been putting off the deep grief. You have been postponing it. And she understood that, you know. And she said, now, you gave me permission.
Yes.
You gave me permission to
Yeah.
grieve.
Yeah.
I hadn't given myself permission.
Right.
And from there on, I mean, I would say to people who are hesitant or afraid or whatever, it's just giving yourself over to a process that will take you. And Sharon, I remember being doubtful at the beginning. I would say to you, remember the stories? I couldn't drive by the hospital
Yes.
where Johnny died.
Yeah.
I would take a detour because
Yeah.
if I went near that hospital, I would either give them the finger or I break out crying.
Yeah.
I would just fall apart.
Yeah.
I had a picture of her in the purple thing I told you
Yeah.
about, a snapshot in the hospital as she was before she died. It's a beautiful picture. And I couldn't look at it. I told you, I
Yeah.
couldn't look at it.
Yeah.
And you said to me, David, and I believed you sort of. You said, there's going to be a day where you will drive by that hospital and you will rejoice. You will miss her, you will feel sad, but you won't be, you will experience the joy
Yeah.
of having this gorgeous, brilliant person in your life for 46 years.
Okay, I'm gonna end the show right here. So one day I'm sitting at home, and my phone rings, and I answer the phone, and it's my friend David on the other end, Erica, and he says, "Sharon, I just drove by the hospital, and I didn't even realize it, and I didn't flip them off." And it was amazing.
Fabulous.
My friends, thank you so much for joining us for this show. I love David. I loved being his guide on this journey. I love our friendship. I love mostly him sharing Janie with me on an intimate level and getting to know her through your heart and through your eyes. So friends, if you are grieving, feel free anytime to reach out to Eric and myself. We are at healingstartswiththeheart.com. Your last words, Erica.
I'm like, my heart, I just could feel it. I could feel the emotion. I feel like I'm in the room. And I just want to say thank you so much, David. Thank you for coming and sharing with us. And thank you for trusting Sharon with your heart. I've been saying that a lot lately because I think that's what it comes down to. You have to trust and believe that this process can help you. And you are just a living testament. So thank you again from both of us.
And thank you. It's my pleasure to be here and to share that gift I've received from Sharon and all of you and from the authors of that book. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, friends.